you need to emerge from this pandemic. The tools to create a new world. The New Athens, the blockchain think tank, brings you those tools to understand the chaos swirling around us and the forum to debate how a new generation will take control from the GoVidiots currently mismanaging our nation and our world, with a breakaway civilization leaving us behind. Watch our Friday Night Lights live stream from the bunker on the New Athens YouTube channel for the best that is thought and said on the issues of the day. Ask not what the New Athens can do for you. Ask what you can do for the New Athens. If you like it, leave a like. If you like the content, please subscribe and share. I'm Lorenzo Mefsud, founder of the New Athens. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Good evening, and welcome to the New Athens here from the bunker in London. I'm Lorenzo Mefsud, founder of the New Athens, and we bring to you tonight what I believe is called #Breakaway Civilization. This is our new hashtag, which we are going to use to get going our network of smart city states. And we've been introducing a lot of new terms lately on the show and through the New Athens various portals. And so to keep you updated and to engage more with exactly the new concepts we're bringing to bear in terms of blockchain republic, blockchain university, the New Athens, why is it called all these different things, we are glad to present tonight an interlocutor, a critic, a revolutionary theoretician, Dana Karyeva, long-term friend of the show. Hey, Dana, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you for coming, and it's good to have you here and show what's going on in the bunker with our breakaway civilization, with us, what we're calling a startup civilization. I think that's how we're going to express it. And I know Dana has been a very long-term follower of the New Athens and what we are trying to promulgate in the world in terms of education, in terms of freedom for people using the blockchain to gain their time back and give themselves a new life plan and a new engagement with reality, which will allow them and you and us to participate together in a new breakaway civilization, this startup civilization that we're creating here, now, and ongoing. So where I'd like to begin is just to thank Dana for her support, both personally to me over a great deal of time. She was the one that really told me last year that we needed to get set up again and get started again. And the end point of that conversation that you and I had, which was very helpful for me personally, is this. And is this what we're doing?
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
You've seeded it out last October when we were discussing the Samsung Note 10 Plus and tech platforms at our dinner party. Not yet sponsored, but we do like South Korean technology, and they're not made in China. You know, it's good stuff.
I have the first question of the day. So, what do you mean by a breakaway civilization? Like, what is that?
Okay, so we've discussed before. Oh, Dan is also. We have Dan and Dana. We have a Ukrainian show tonight with Dan Kolupski and Dana Karyeva. So Dan, Dana, and I suppose I'm
Polish
Dana.
and a Russian surname. Yeah.
Am I Danist? I don't know. Maybe Dana, Danist is like a triad.
I don't know what I meant by that, but
so I have to be the Daniest of the Dans. Like a multi-Dan judo supreme. But you get above the black belt, then you get to the Dans.
Okay.
Cheers in the New Athens. First thing was your question, exactly what a breakaway civilization is. Now, Dan and I, in our geopolitical analysis on various of our live streams, have been going through in great detail.
Been listening to Spengler.
Yes, both in terms of the history of geopolitics, which we're making a movie on with Dan at the moment, and which will be produced soon, of the history and theory of
8-minute video
geopolitics from 1815 through 1970 to today.
Yeah.
So essentially, the history of geopolitics is this in a nutshell, as Dan has summarized for us, based on the work of Mackinder, who was like the key theorist of geopolitics in the 19th century.
Read his stuff. It's
yeah,
really
we've got
cool.
to get. We're going to go through the.
He was one of the
detail.
founders of the LSE. He founded geography as a discipline. So
Yes.
the School of Geography in Oxford is called the Mackinder School of Oxford.
So
He was a director at the LSE, and
so he was advising the
climbed
British
Mount
Empire.
Kenya.
He was advising the British Empire on how to.
Kilimanjaro, yeah.
He was advising the British Empire on how to enter a second century of the 20th century. Or maybe even a third, depending on where you look at the start, when you take the East India Company as part of the British Empire or not. Projecting imperial force, and so he was a theorist within the British Empire scheme, and then what was the other one? Halford Mackinder and
Nicholas
Speakman. Yeah, Speakman was then the American who advised the Americans on how to do geopolitics. So 1815, Napoleon is defeated at Waterloo. The British Empire wins. Then we have a reorientation of the combat between Britain, Russia, and America. America is rising. Britain is preeminent, and Russia is kind of declining. We move through the 19th century. The Great Game continues with the Crimean War between Russia and Britain and Turkey, and so on. And then we get through to the First World War, 1917, when you see America rising, Britain declining, and Russia, of course, goes into Soviet and has its own revolution. So we see out of that revolution come the Soviet Union. So the British Empire declines at the start of after the First World War towards the Second World War, and then by 1948, India's gone and Britain's out of the game. Really, it becomes a satellite of America. So what we see is America rising after the First World War into a combat with Russia. So we had a combat between France and England, then a combat between England or Britain and America and Russia. Then we see England go out of the game. It's in the 20th century. It's the Soviet Union versus the Americans. And then through the 20th century, you see America containing Russia geopolitically around its rim, taking China off in 1971 when Nixon supposedly met Mao, but actually it was Kissinger meeting Mao. And they opened up China to America, took a communist country away from the Russian solution of Soviet communism and put them in the American sphere of influence. So then you have Soviet Union isolated, it declines towards 1991 when it fails, and then you see the rise of China, which stops being an American ally and starts being an American competitor. And so now in the 20s, we're seeing the Great Game continue with an axis of China versus America in a geopolitical stage. However, that's one level, and the substructure is this. Breakaway civilization is within the structure that Kissinger and Mao created in 1971. They took away all the industry from the West, whether it's the north of England or the Rust Belt in America, and they put it all in China. The American elite, economic, banking, and industrial, then collaborated with China to re-import cheap goods into the West, Britain, Europe, and America, when the working class of these countries was unemployed. And they then substituted the proletariat, the working class, or whatever you want to call them, in a democracy, and substituted them for middle-class graduates who like cheap Chinese goods based on slavery to get the cheap prices. So what we see is a denuding of industry from the West. It goes to China. The corporations go to China and socialize the profits between the Chinese Communist Party and the corporations. They re-import the goods back into the West, siphoning off the money back into China. And so China becomes the node in this globalist economic network, which apart from the apparent combat between China and America, which on the surface is happening. The elite in America are collaborating with the Chinese in order to create what we call a breakaway civilization. What is a breakaway civilization? Essentially, Westerners are annoying for the ruling class because we like unions and we like rights and we like civil liberties and we like constitutions and we like freedom and the ability to associate, the ability to have free speech and debate and have democracies. Now, these are annoying for elites because people have ideas and they do their own thing. What the elites really want, ideally, is Chinese drones. They want ants. They want an ant in an anthill. They don't want free people, free men on the land under a common law. They want a controlled population who are all within an economic and social structure which allows them to be exploited, and then the profit to be creamed off, taken out to China, and removed from there to enriching the Chinese Communist Party, taken to New Zealand to allow the super rich, whether they be the Jeff Bezoses, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Hillary Clintons, the Joe Bidens, the Bill Gateses of this world, to then create a private country of New Zealand, where they can all retreat to for America, leave America to this Chinese-American social credit system. So it's developed in China and then being re-imported right now into America, which turns the smartphones into the 1984 surveillance devices, which control us. It's our passport. It's our ability to go outside. It's our ability to buy a train ticket or a plane ticket. It's our ability to pay through the tap, through tap payments, which is logged on a banking app, which is then visible to the ledger is visible, unlike blockchain, to the powers that be. And so to farm humans, the elite have sandboxed this system in China, which is a command and control system. It uses kind of like looking through the other end of the telescope to blockchain. And so instead of saying we're creating technology of human freedom, we're creating technology of command and control. So this will then be this is now, you can see, being re-imported into the West to allow this breakaway civilization to take the money and the capital over to New Zealand, create a private navy. This is what the Lord of the Rings was about with James Cameron. They were creating a structure where they can have this island away from everything as their non-5G paradise of merino wool sheep and rich people in their bunkers with a private navy and a private army, to allow China to then take over the global commerce and control of the people, and then all the white elites from the West can go and retreat to New Zealand and have their breakaway civilization from us, abandoning us to this geopolitical economic system that they're creating between China and the American corporations. That's what a breakaway civilization is in the world that we see outside of this room. But what we're trying to do is create our own breakaway civilization using blockchain technology with the New Athens to create a pro-human future, not a pro-Borg, pro-anthill future. So that's my basic answer.
My God, that is the longest explanation of anything.
Well, it's hard.
No, that's brilliant. I love hearing about all the history, all the everything. But for somebody that doesn't have an IQ of probably 180, can you sum up in about 3 sentences a breakaway civilization? So a civilization that
exactly, going back to the.
So the reason I'm calling it startup civilization is that we're taking this idea of what the breakaway civilization represents to the Anglo-American, EU, Western, and Chinese elite.
Right.
I mean, we're reverse engineering that to create our own, which is empowering human freedom rather than human slavery.
Okay, so breaking away from the elite.
So the elite are creating their own breakaway civilization. They're allowing China. Right. They're allowing China to take over the running of the world through the UN, through the corporations, and through the drip feeds of consumerism. So we don't make anything in the West. We don't know how to make anything, and we just rely on cheap imported goods. So we become lacking in skills, lacking in education, because we don't need to do anything. We're just on our smartphones. So we become farmed by this economic system, which provides feeding tubes into our little matrix pods of all the things that we need from China, so we don't need to make anything ourselves. Look at N95 masks, look at M3 masks, look at the PPE crisis or the ventilator crisis that we saw in the past few months. All this stuff is made in China, right? And so China can say, well, actually, we have a geostrategic interest in keeping the PPE for the Chinese people that we make for you, and then we'll just break the contract. And what are you going to do, invade us? And so the Americans then stopping German planes on Singaporean tarmac to like take the PPE from the Germans that they already paid for, because there's a global shortage, because we don't make anything, we leave it all to China.
So we're really reliant on what they're doing for us, so we can't really have any say in
exactly. We're not
things
building things for ourselves. So this is the breakaway of the civilization. Is firstly the Chinese Western economic system that we're seeing being built up with the social credit system and the consumerism, and then breaking away from this, like the SpaceX rocket coming off and going up to the space station. We see the rich going to New Zealand and creating their haven for themselves. That's their breakaway civilization, breaking away from the main morass.
Okay, there we go. One sentence. Look at that.
So what we're doing is we're taking that concept and we're building our own. That's for humans, not for.
So what are you breaking away from?
So we're breaking away from both the Chinese American economy system, which takes our time and turns it into farmed time, and we're breaking away from then this breakaway element and using their tactics and their strategy for our own purposes.
So a revolution.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Love an explanation in 3 words.
Yes.
That anyone can understand.
Startup, civilization, revolution, blockchain.
What the?
Now that we're all on board, what's next on the agenda?
So, I was interested in what you were saying about IQ.
Right.
I've never.
We were talking about this earlier, weren't we?
Yeah, we were talking about IQ earlier. I've never taken an IQ test.
Why not?
Because
I don't want to see the results.
yeah, exactly. I think I'm very low IQ.
Who the fuck are they to tell me how smart or stupid I am?
Exactly.
Yeah,
So Dan's hit it on the head.
I mean, you can look at it like that, or you can reframe it and say, maybe I'll look at it on my CV. Maybe people will look at me differently.
So maybe I'll be a good cow. Maybe I'll be a lots of milk cow in the farm.
You don't have to publish it if it's bad. You've got organizations like Mensa.
No, you don't have to publish it.
Yeah,
it's already in a file. Like
but
your IQ.
Who's going to look up at your IQ? I mean, depending on where you're going to. I mean, if you're going to work for.
So things like your genes and your IQ, right? They are information
that anyone can use to their advantage. Yeah? No.
They're information contained in your body, right? Your IQ, if you
debatable.
It's information instantiated in your body, right? The performance you do on an IQ test is dependent on you doing a test. If you've never done the test, the information is inchoate inside your mind, right?
Right.
So it may be 150, it may be 80, who knows? But nobody knows unless and until you take a test.
So why don't you want to take a test?
Because I don't want that information to be intelligible to a computer. As soon as you take the test is going to be in the internet somehow, or intelligible to the internet in terms of it can be written down as a number. Numbers can be in computers, right? They're intelligible to the Turing test. So if you do not take an IQ test, you don't have an IQ apart from the one inside your body. It's not written down anywhere. Why is that important? Why is that important?
Well, if you do a cost-benefit analysis,
you can't be categorized.
What are the benefits and what are the costs of somebody having your IQ score?
The costs are that you are providing another data point for you being farmed. So you say you can promote yourself.
How are people going to take advantage of you just because they know your IQ?
Because
I mean, if anything,
if
it's a high IQ, you're going to be invited to things that are maybe exclusive.
If it's a high IQ,
yeah, but so look, no one cares. You're just a statistic. You're just on the bell curve. You're dead smack in the middle. No one cares. You're the same as everyone else. But if it's high,
but it's low.
Opportunities.
But placing yourself on that bell curve. There are so many bell curves, right? There are like. Looks.
You're focusing too much on bell curves now.
Yeah, but you don't understand. We're vain. We have egos. We don't want to hurt our egos.
Yeah, of course we don't know how our egos. We don't want to get anything, anything below acceptable. But that's not the point. You're not seeing the meta point
our
here.
bullshit. Like that's the only thing we have going for us.
So let's look at 23andMe. So a good friend of the show, Gemma, runs a new genetic startup, right? And we're going to be featuring an investigation that she has been putting together on 23andMe.
Oh, really?
And other genetics coding businesses, right?
Yep.
So the idea is 23andMe, you pay some money to a company and they send you a test kit. You like Spit, where you take a blood test or take some hair or whatever it is.
Some hair, I think.
You put something off from your body into a packet and you send it off back to the company. Now there's a set of terms and conditions that go with a contract. So you're paying for the contract, right? Yeah. Because they're saying, we provide you with a service, and that service is to know more about your genes, which are inside your body, sitting there, waiting to be coded into a machine-readable form. They're in a machine-readable form to like making more cells in the DNA, but they're not in a machine-readable form in a computer. And we can send it back to you in a machine-readable form in a computer. So we can spit out the code in your cell that you give us. Then we can sequence it and send like both the Gattaca code back to you of your exact genome, and also we can then tell you some big data analysis that we've done about where your ancestors came from.
And that's all good stuff. But what are the issues that can arise from that?
The issues are when you look at the contract that you've signed, you've paid for, right? So we very interesting contract law
that
here.
You've agreed to and you should have read. So it's kind of on you.
But people tick through. Look at the 50-page iPhone click through. You go to the bottom of the form, you tick the thing. It's actually a button to go to the end.
Yeah.
So you don't have to read
suffer through that, and neither does the company when you read too much into it.
So contract law is very, very important. Contract law is the way in which we've designed our society to not fight about things. So the idea is that
social contract theory, that's not contract law.
They meet. This is what I was saying. They meet up in the middle in a very deceptive way. So
the word contract.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So social contract is using the term of contract law, but totally blowing it up. Now, so what is a contract? A contract is we don't have to deal with one another as free men on the land in a common law jurisdiction. So we're just walking on the street, both in public space. We don't need to talk to one another. If I choose to talk to you, you can just walk on by and ignore me. You don't have any responsibility to interact with me on any basis. But I can treat with you. To treat in terms of common law is a contract, is an invitation to enter into a contract. So anything I say to you or do to you in the public space or anywhere is what we call an inchoate contract. It's not written on a piece of paper, but it's an offer. Like, hey, how are you? That's a contract. I'm offering you a contract of
because I'm responding. Is that why
I'm offering for you to express how you and a greeting and say how you are. It's a dumb thing, but this is a very simple example.
Yeah,
more simple than paying for something. It's actually contracts are how we interact in civil society. So we don't write down on a piece of paper, hey, how, okay, you do it. You do if you're texting somebody. But so in speech, you would meet in the street, you say, hey, how are you? What that means is, would you like to enter into a conversation with me, yes or no? And the no can be expressed by not doing anything, right? You can just walk on by. So if you accept the terms of my contract, you might greet me and then we start a conversation and we might exchange some information or whatever, pleasantries. It doesn't matter. The point is, this is a model for how we interact in society. If we were to legalize the way that we interact in a normal way, then it forms contracts. So a contract could be, there's this beer in the window and I put a price tag on the beer, right? And you're walking past the window. The price on the beer and displayed in the window is called an invitation to treat. So what I do when I offer you a contract is I invite you to treat for it, and then you can give me an offer and I can give you a counter offer, and then we can come to an agreement. And if it's a written contract, we both take all the terms, we write them down, we agree the terms, we revise the terms in various rounds, then we sign on the dotted line together, we execute it by deed with Dan as a witness, that we all mean what we say and we say what we mean, and we all know the consequences of what we're getting into, and then we're all bound to the terms of the contract until it runs out, and we can sue one another if we break the terms of the contract, because we agreed to it in advance, we all knew what was going on, and we, in full conscience and in sound mind, compos mentis, we've agreed to these terms and we can come to an understanding together. So we don't need then to, so I don't need to have a blood feud with you and like my children will kill your children for 7 generations. Right. You know, that's what we were controlling.
Let me ask you. So what kind of contract is the kind of contract that you're creating with 23andMe? That's not an invitation to treat, is it? No.
So the invitation to treat is 23andMe put a website up and they say 23andMe.
But then when you actually accept,
and so then then they say $23. You will send you a 23andMe gene pack, and then so you then pay, and the payment is the acceptance of the terms and conditions. Okay. So they've made the invitation to treat. You've accepted that invitation and you formed the contract together. They then send you the thing, and then you're both bound under the terms and conditions, which only they've written. You didn't write any of your own. You didn't revise the terms.
Don't read them.
You didn't bother to go to that. There's that stage of the contract process that you didn't even bother with. You just purchased.
And you can't dispute it. You can't change
because you've agreed to it by paying.
Before, like you can't change.
You could.
The terms.
Of course you can. You can
if
say,
they say
hey,
we're going to send it to
you could just not agree on the terms.
Reverse engineer you. Then
you could just not agree on the terms. Therefore, there will be no contract. That's
there is only
one you can bargain with.
Yeah, you might not have any bargaining.
Yes or no.
So if you don't have any bargaining power, then it's yes or no. So you don't enter into that stage. You just pay, and so they then give you they take your genes, they do the process in the contract, and they give you back the readout. They've still got your genes.
Okay, so why is it bad that they have our genes?
So if you look at the terms and conditions of the contracts, then you'll see that you give them a license. So a license is the intellectual property right to exploit what you give them.
We definitely, but I trust that the contract we have with the government.
No, there is no contract with the government. That's the social contract, which we're going to talk about later.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that, okay, fine, but
no, you've hit on it. Yes,
our
you have
rights
hit on
are guaranteed, and I think that we could actually. It's cool. I found out how many relatives I have, basically, and where they are. And it gives you a very interesting idea of where your family are from.
It's marketed as being fun.
Yeah.
But it also can be really interesting for like your medical history.
Of course. And it can be helpful.
It can be used. So you aggregate a bunch of data.
Of course.
But it's protected data. You have your rights. You can dispute.
So the problem is
nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Yeah. But when you make
what's the most advanced society on
earth?
Potential loss. Yes. Yeah. So Dan's a lawyer. He knows about potential loss. So the idea being, when you sign the contract, and we've looked at these contracts in detail, and Gemma has a contract that doesn't give herself these rights. They reserve the right in their contract to create a license of your genetic code, which means they can keep the record. They don't have to delete it, and they can use it for several purposes, or any purpose, because they have it. So under the terms of the contract, they can do things like recode you, use you in the big. So they can decode and analyze your genetic code, and then they can put it into their big data machine, and they can derive insights from looking at your data in combination with other data, which also has all come in under these contracts, and then they can, for you and for other people's benefit, the users then analyze your data and work out in aggregate different insights.
I'm logging into my dad's 23andMe right now.
Perfect.
So I don't want to pay for it. My mom and my dad did it, so I basically have both sides.
So what? But what the license is?
My information is they don't get shit, but I know everything because I got my mom's and my dad's sides.
So
that's clever.
So the idea being, once you have turned, as with the IQ, once you've turned a piece of information that's inchoate inside your body into a machine-readable, Turing test compliant set of data, which a computer can read, which is what they do for you. It's not what they do for them. So
check it out.
There we go. Here's some readouts.
This is my father's ancestry.
Hold it up a bit.
Vladislav.
He's 100%. Actually, no, half 100%. No,
he's
100% of him.
Yeah, he's 100% white. He is European.
No,
There's
he's
99.7% European. So he might be 0.3% black.
So what else do we have?
What about Ashkenazi Jewish? Eastern half Eastern European.
It's not
just
even.
under
It's not
half.
even. It's not even like.
Northwestern European, just over 1%.
Which means the Viking. He's a Rurik.
Southern
He was
European,
like- he was a
1.4%.
Viking, yeah.
Broadly European, 2.4%, and then like.
Is there any other
some
stats,
bits
not
and
just
pieces.
where you're from?
Yeah,
but
there's
about
loads of
you?
there's loads
Yeah,
of
I mean,
analysis.
so-
About your, like, maybe you have disease.
Okay,
or
this is-
anything.
Yeah.
Do they do that?
Yeah,
too?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
they
you can do
that, yeah,
diseases,
We
and you
won't
can
ask
do.
you to go into that.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
it's fine.
Vladdy's great. He's a wonderful guy, and he would.
Vladdy is the disease.
Yeah.
The
Lock up
disease
your
is
granddaughter.
Vladdy. Yeah.
Vladdy, he's your
Seriously.
daddy. So
There was a cobra bit Vlad once, and 3 weeks later it died from poison. Okay.
So
This is-
so they do this for you, right?
Mhm.
They
okay, so
say
he's
it's
actually
for
more
you.
Polish than
They give a very helpful readout. But what
look,
you
like
I
he's
was going
more
to say it's more helpful for them to have our data than us to
Exactly,
have that
especially
data.
you
like,
don't get
if
all
you
the other
actually
people's
think
data.
about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
you get the they're in the funnel. You
There's
get the
Data
tip.
privacy. Of
So,
course.
but this is all laws, and laws are written down on pieces of paper. And you know,
Or
I
digitally.
can hold up a constitution, and you can shoot me with a gun through the constitution. And so my
And would it
rights,
hit you?
my rights are my rights
Would
are
you-
exactly nil if you have a gun, right? So I can talk about my rights all I want,
interesting.
but in the end, force majeure wins every
Mhm.
single time. And force majeure is possession is 9/10 of the law. So if they've got the data already, maybe they have it for a specific purpose.
Mhm.
Maybe under certain terms of the contract, they're supposed to delete it after a certain amount of time.
This
Or-
tells me where my people came from. So look,
Exactly.
I am probably they came from Poland
More
more
than
genetically than Russia
I
or
thought we
you
were
or
brothers.
Ukraine.
in arms.
Why?
Well, I mean, like I have.
with
No, I mean,
firearms.
like, hey, whatever. I mean, like, what's your like, what's your ethnic background? You're Russian, right?
Just, no, I'm half
Okay,
Russian, half
yeah, but
Polish.
if the Soviet Union existed, right? Like on your birth
Let's
certificate.
not focus on what divides us.
Yeah, but
Let's
whatever.
focus
What's
on
the
what-
law? Let's focus on the law. What does it say in your
law?
birth certificate?
I'm legally a British citizen.
Yeah,
Okay.
but your birth certificate.
Don't know what that is.
My birth certificate? No, because like in Ukrainian birth
Lost in the
certificate, they would
void.
state your
It
they
was
would state your
accidentally.
race as well. So when I was born, my mom's race is Russian, and my dad was a U.S. citizen, so they didn't include his race. He just said U.S. citizen. But in his, when he was born, it would say Jew.
Really?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
yeah, and then you couldn't get into university.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was super hard. And so they send them all to this university in Siberia, and it became like this like fucking high tech. like they developed like
smart.
they developed satellites and shit. It's quite funny. So they didn't let them go into any good universities. So they're like this one in Siberia where like all the real shit happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, to cut a long story short, what the license says that they can do, what the contract says that they can do is have a license. And what the license is the ability to keep your data for their own purposes. Now, there's some banned purposes under other laws, like cloning you, like
Wouldn't that be fun?
like providing. But there are services which they do say they can provide you, like medical services. So not only can they give you the readout of what genetic diseases you may or may not have according to their best estimation, but they also reserve the right to provide you with other medical services and promotions through third parties. So what that means is this. Let's say I'm a 33-year-old Caucasian male of Greek, Maltese, English, and unknown descent, whatever, and I have these kinds of genetic flaws which can be identified in my medical profile from giving my genes away. And then let's say in 20 years time I'll be 53 and I'll be likely to have this kinds of cancer, heart disease, pulmonary disease, and so on. And then 23andMe reserve the right, if I join up to them,
Asparagus odor detection.
if I join up,
That's
if I
a thing.
that's one
That's
of the
a- that's
things
a
that they
thing, yeah.
think you might
Not
be able to
something I
match.
thought I'd ever hear in my life.
Yes,
It's a superpower.
you
So
know-
apparently, to Asian people, we all smell of dairy.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes. Or if you look at the
because
Philippines,
they don't eat like cheese.
if you
and
look
stuff
at
there,
the Philippines has an American colony, it's American diet, and so they all get so big
yeah.
because they eat dairy and they haven't evolved to take it because
Yeah.
they have this American
It's
colony.
our Western imperial
Yeah,
ways.
yes.
Like you don't understand, but these Chinese with their COVID and 5G, they have nothing against Burger King and McDonald's. You've entrenched so far.
Yes.
Sun Tzu doesn't know who he's dealing with.
The third battlefield.
Yeah.
No, they're
Fast food.
gonna...
Cultural imperialism.
So, 20 years time, I'm 53. They think I'm going to have heart disease, and they have grown a heart out of my genetic code with one of their partner organizations. And they say, they gave me a mail shot in my like super email in my Elon Musk like Neuralink head in 20 years time that says, hey, you may be getting heart disease. We think from the 23andMe you did 20 years ago, you may be getting heart disease by now. We grew you a heart.
God, they even
So
said,
and it's sitting there
benefit.
waiting for you if you pay $100,000.
dude, they even tell you when you're likely to wake up.
What?
7, like, that's so fucking weird. Why?
So
Is that true though?
No.
Or is that a
What if he wakes
more
up
of a
at like
behavioural
7,
thing than a
like
genetic?
8:03? That's it. Like the whole.
it's non-falsifiable.
But then again, everybody wakes up early to go to job, like to go to work. I mean, how fucking accurate is this? You gotta get, like, if you have like a 9 to fucking 5 job, you're gonna wake up at like 8 or 7.
7:57 potentially.
They know what kind of a
8:03,
job he has.
8:03.
Well, how did that fucking they know his commute?
It's like we're gonna bet on how fast these raindrops go down this window. You know, I'll pick this one, you pick that one, and see where they get.
I think it's just more of a
Sweet
fact,
steak.
just thrown in there.
Yeah, of course.
You
It's-
feel
of
like
course,
you're getting
of
more
course, it's
value.
bullshit.
Than
They're giving you more
getting.
fake value, exactly, because they need to justify to you all the fun little games of that's interesting,
Okay,
because
no,
they want them to clone you. Of
What?
course, the law says they can't, but when they have your genetic data, they can.
They can, yes, potentially, of course. I get
And
that.
they will.
But
because
so what?
all-
I would love to have another one of me running around.
Not if they say that's the real one and they kill you off.
I mean,
Ice cream flavor preference.
Or they say, oh,
is
we
she
set
better
up-
than me
we
in
set-
every way?
we
and
set
can
up
do
a
better
blo-
in the world.
How
Then
about-
keep her?
How
Like,
about
I mean,
this?
what's the
How
deal?
about this?
Oh my god, we need to pay 125 more dollars.
23andMe. 23andMe says in 20 years' time, we've got a check for you. And they deposit a check in your social credit system, like
Right.
account in your hand, and suddenly you're getting all this cash from 23andMe because you did the 23andMe back in 2020.
Because your clone is a slave.
Yes. So
Was
So-
that? Am I right? Did I get that right?
so
That's
what? So they
shocking.
say so you query this 23andMe and say, what? Sorry, what's this? Oh, this is the residual check.
Oh, they wouldn't give you money.
This
They'd just hide it.
no. This is in the contract. The residual check. Yeah. The Dana Karyeva model is doing really well
A
in
really
all
good
of our
model.
in all of our child brothels in Kowloon.
Stop. Stop.
So we we find the 5 to 9
Crossing
we find the
sublime.
5 to 9 year old Dana Karyeva is our best product.
I know my
And
clone
so, but
would
we have to
oppose
kill
that.
them. We have to kill them off by age 10. So you've got the residual, not only from the benefits of the prostitution, but also of the estate, because you are the next of kin of you.
Nice.
So this is this is you know 20, this is 2040 23andMe. Of course, the other thing is when they make the heart for you to transplant into yourself if you get heart disease.
I appreciate that.
That's not from stem cells. That's from a Dana Karyeva body they've been growing for the past 20 years. And she's on ice in a cryotube. And so then they're just going to harvest her.
Does she have a soul?
They've been growing her for 20 years
So yes.
from your genetic code. Now, they get it now. The
But
cryotube's
she
just coming
hasn't had a
online.
life, so let her die.
But then what about
She
if
hasn't
she
lived,
what
it
about if they
doesn't matter.
decide what
It's
if
a vessel.
what about if
It's
they
just a
decide they
vessel.
what about if they decide they want her to be the Dana Karyeva number 1 and then they kill
Well, if
off
she's been
you?
on ice for 20 years, she's not going to be better
No, they
than
grew
me.
her perfectly. Perfect musculature, perfect
Yeah,
nutrition.
but did she have an upbringing? Just have a good Ukrainian
they just-
family?
They just uploaded your consciousness and re-downloaded it into her when you had a patch update
Well, if it's my
of your
consciousness,
Neuralink.
then I'm very happy to be younger. You know, just
No, but
they
it's
put it in a
not
different
you.
body.
No, but it won't be. It's a copy of you. It's copy
Yeah,
paste.
but if they put my consciousness in
if
there,
I copy
it is
and,
me.
no, if I copy and
What do you
paste this
know?
text,
It's
if
not
I
copy and paste. If
so
they,
if I write down some text in a book, right, and I copy and paste this text, and I publish this one is still ripped in two. It's not the same thing. The copy paste doesn't transfer this
I
into
think that's a
there.
bad analogy.
Yeah?
I think it's a bad example.
So just because you copy paste your consciousness is another one.
Lorenzo,
the way you
so
solve all of these
theoretical.
is not
So
because people are doing it now, and how many millions?
23andMe is marketed exactly for Americans,
Exactly.
it's
fun.
people,
it's a fun
people who
game.
want to
You can
explore
see-
their heritage, as if like, oh, that's
Everybody
something really
loves-
Okay,
far
I've got a
away,
better
and costs like a
question.
$500 flight to explore. Like it's literally like curious
Explore
to
the
explore Eastern
houses.
European heritage.
Yeah, explore
Learn
the
more
house.
about the art history of Poland.
some
and-
clip art.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. So
Okay, I've
Or
got a
make
better
it seem
question.
like so romantic, but they were just serfs, man. It's like you were carrying grain around. That's why you left to America. You wouldn't, if you lived in one of these houses, you wouldn't leave. Well, unless the Nazis came.
you were saying.
Better question, right?
Okay.
So imagine if this technology was happening back in the day when the great minds were around, Einstein, whatever, and
Einstein to Eisenstein. Yeah. Okay.
just whoever was top of their game, top of their field, doing good things, positive things for the world, the greater good.
Yeah.
Okay, if we say had a terrible crisis, I mean, we may be in the midst of one now, we may come out of it, but what if we didn't? What if population increased to such
of the
amounts?
tripocalypse, people.
What if population increased to such amounts that we couldn't
Look at the
solve it with
composition of what
Dan?
Sorry.
What if
Dan.
Funny.
Dan and Danas.
What if? Oh wait! What if? I can't wait to hear what you have to say, but just give me a second. What if we couldn't
You gotta
solve?
just like power through and ignore him.
What if our collective IQ can't
He's your
solve it?
id.
What if our collective IQ? Oh, that's a good point. What if our collective IQ couldn't solve our issues? What if Einstein had an IQ of whatever? What was it, 200 or something, and he could do anything? Or the other great minds. What if we had their data? What if we had their DNA and we could just bring them back? Would we do that?
Well, they do.
Because it
They
would
do.
save.
Did you
It would
not
save.
read
It would be
Einstein's
for the
brain?
greater
There's a
good.
very
It would
good
save
book.
us, right?
There's a very good book called
Theory.
Einstein's Brain. So he
never
left
read
his
that.
brain to Princeton. He taught at Princeton. He left his brain
I
to
know
Princeton,
that. Yeah.
and they
And it's now lost, isn't it?
they sliced it into thin lamina and then analyzed every cell in the brain to try to derive from a autopsy of that brain what was so good about it. And all they found out was it was quite small for a human brain. And they didn't actually, but they found some things.
They didn't know what to look for.
Exactly.
So
So they sliced it up, but then they kept the DNA. They've got Einstein on file. That's not an issue. Look, if you look at the tech, like look at the Samsung Note 10 Plus.
Not sponsored.
DARPA had the tech and the patents for the smartphone screen in the 1950s. Then they
They're
let
holding
it
back
out
that
slowly.
technology.
Yeah, of course they are. That's what the Breakaway
Do you
civilization
delve
is.
much into the the UFO, the
Yeah, of
secrets?
Like so.
They say that microfiber is a technology that we got from UFOs.
I got microphone time.
No, but they say that they got them from a dropped spaceship.
Yeah, so
aircraft.
there was a good Joe Rogan actually with a guy whose name escapes me, who was working at Area 51. It's like 3 hours in depth. He's been discredited by NASA. They've tried to ruin his life. But he has a local newspaper from like Nevada saying local scientist creates bottle rockets. In the spare time, he created bottle rockets, amateur rockets going up. And you see how far they can get up. So there was a little feature on him in a local newspaper in like the Area 51 village next door. And he used this to demonstrate in the microfiche archives that he was there, because they tried to delete his existence. So to show that he was working there and that there was a big cover up. Anyway, so he said that they were studying like 10 UFOs or so in massive hangar. They had hangar bays, and each UFO had a team. He didn't know there were 10 until one day all of the hangar doors in between these bays and the hangar were lifted up, and he saw down the line that there were 10 different UFOs that they were studying. He was looking at the propulsion system. He didn't really make that much headway. There were other people in the team with different kind of physicists and materials scientists looking at the shell, looking at the life support system for the creature inside, blah blah blah. And each one of there was compartmentalized. So each one of these UFOs had their own team studying all the different aspects, who didn't talk to one another, who kept away from one another on the base. And what was really astonishing was some of those UFOs they had found in archaeological digs, buried under the ground. and they'd uncovered them
Really?
and then taken them up into the Area 51 to study.
Oh,
So they
I
hadn't
didn't
been,
know
they
that.
hadn't crashed.
Mm.
They'd been found buried. So they've been here a long
Long
time. Anyway, so that's kind of besides the point. I'll find the guy, and I will leave his Joe Rogan in the show notes, because like he's fully taken apart and grilled over a 3-hour window over the veracity of what he's saying, and it kind of checks out, certainly to my honest reckon.
I'll be looking at that later then.
Yeah, I'll send it through. But nevertheless, what you was about.
If we could bring back the greatest minds right now.
We were talking about DARPA and how they let out technology on a track where they have the tech already, and then decades later they release it to the public. So this is part of the breakaway civilization that we were talking about before. So we come back around.
Oh, that's
So
fantastic.
part of what we're doing part of what we see with the breakaway civilization of the deep state, of the Chinese American collaboration to then create this breakaway civilization in New Zealand, which people are calling the US deep state, right? That Eisenhower, when he gave the baton of the presidency to Jack Kennedy, called it in his farewell speech to the nation the military-industrial complex. It's also called the administrative state. In Britain, it's called the establishment. These are the people who, when there's a vote and one party loses, they don't get fired. Civil servants, military men, equerries to the royal court, the royals, all different kinds of administrative entities, agencies, and other organizations which are not part of our democracy. They exist anyway, and they will stay whatever we vote. Now, in America, because America is a democratic republic, actually, I heard a really beautiful line from Alex Jones earlier today on InfoWars, which I thought really summed this distinction up perfectly, and something I wanted to get onto, and now we have. He said today, democracy safeguards the majority, a republic safeguards the individual, right? So a democracy allows the majority to vote for what they want. As you saw in ancient Athens, which is why we've called the New Athens, because we're bringing back ancient Athenian democracy in the age of the smartphone using blockchain tech. So we can all decide together how we want to pilot the ship of state. However, a republic, which the Americans have and we don't have, safeguards the individual. So this is the American Constitution. This is why we hang the flag, as you asked earlier, because not because we particularly favor America in its geopolitical actions in 100 years. Instead, what we see in America is a sandboxing, in the same way that in China, the deep state has sandboxed the social credit system and human farming. In America, since 1776, we've been sandboxing how to do a republic since ancient Athens. And so the reason why we fly this flag in the New Athens and on the show is because they're, although imperfect, the only Republican, the only major Republican global system that we have as a sandbox, as a proof of concept. Okay, there's the so there's Switzerland, which does more direct democracy, but it's not a global player in quite the same way as America is. And long live the Republic. The starlight's last gleaming, with broad stripes and bright stars through that perilous night. Oh, the ramparts. We watched.
Let's see who my English
For it gallantly streaming through the rocket's red glare.
Oh my God! Look, I have English relatives.
What was that thing you wanted to say earlier and I interrupted you? After you interrupted
I think
me.
we've gone into like cadenza,
Well, no,
ad libitum. We've lost it. Yeah.
So
Oliver,
the British
Nalkin,
Constitution,
our producer,
the British
and
Constitution,
host.
Woo!
the British Constitution is not written down,
Matt
not
Hancock didn't understand that.
No,
you were
yeah.
saying.
and but the American Constitution is written down.
Yes.
Now, the British Constitution could be interpreted in the way that Jimi Hendrix interprets the American national anthem, whereas, would you be able to jazz up the American Constitution in the way that Jimi Hendrix jazzed up the American national anthem?
Yes.
All right.
Shall we? Give it a go?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the thing of like people say that the American Constitution is kind of a codified version of the British Constitution, because like when they codify stuff and they create a statute, they bring in all the common law and bits into like one document. The British Constitution is just like not one document; it's a whole
Bit of
bunch of
case law and decisions.
It's
and
a whole
judgment.
bunch of different bits and stuff. Yeah, like different acts increasing suffrage and increasing rights and limitations. I mean, like it all kind of stems from the Bill of Rights, essentially. Like probably the more important one, right? I mean, you could say Magna Carta and stuff, but really it's like
The Americans have all of the copies they can snap off of Magna Carta. They see Magna Carta as the proof of concept for the American Constitution. They're obsessed. We don't even learn about the Magna Carta in British schools.
Yeah, but I mean, Magna Carta is not that uniquely British. It's just an arrangement between the king
Barons.
and barons.
Yeah, of course, it's a
very,
but what
just
it
a very
is-
Germanic thing.
Yeah, well, no, it's a democracy of. They weren't really.
It's just an
Weren't
aristocracy.
really German. It was more between the French Normans and the Anglo-Saxons.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that the French are
previous
also Franks,
generation.
and you got to understand that these,
and they move
it's a
into
instead of it being a Romance and Latin concept,
the Holy
it's
Roman
a very
concept.
it's a very Germanic
So-
Saxon thing. The
So,
way the
yeah, I
way, the
see
way
what
they
you're
divide
saying. I
these
see what
things.
you're
It's
saying.
not the autocrator
Yeah,
or imperator.
yeah. So
right?
it's Saxon hue and cry common law
yeah.
of a democracy of barons, but it's a even though it's a small number of electors, like the Elector Palatinate. Okay, it's an electorate of like 20 fucking people. However, it is an electorate, and it's this idea that the sovereign is responsible to a set of electors who can depose him. He's not absolute for life or because he's divinely ordained.
Because it's like the
It's
first.
because some guys say you're the chairman of the board.
It's the first. The Magna
About
Carta is
that.
just like the first constitutional element of
So they see
people
it as
asserting
really
their rights, limiting arbitrary power of a king.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then it kind of went on, like people got more rights, and now the fight is for let's increase essentially racial minorities' rights. That's kind of like where we are today, probably.
Yeah.
And then there's still like the fight of female rights and in non-constitutional areas, but like business discrimination. So that's kind of like how the Constitution works. Is that once upon a time, you had to have a golden hat and a bunch of land, and then you could vote or be in parliament. And since then, we kind of moved a long way.
I mean, yeah,
Just
of course,
gradually
what we have-
giving more people power to do that. Yeah.
What we have today is entirely derived from, well, not entirely, but it stemmed from something,
Yeah.
and then it evolved,
Yeah.
potentially in the wrong direction at some point.
Well, it's like the difference
Or
between
maybe in the direction most favorable to the people in power, or the elite, or the ones with most control over others.
and then there's like the crazy European version where they try to create stuff on abstract principles, and it's like, right, and tell me, how did this result in genocide and a bunch of like heads being chopped off by a guillotine and stuff? I don't know. Russians are like that as well, like the Soviet Union. We're going to create a society based on Marxist principles. Shit, 60 million people were like killed, but how did that happen? Because you can't, in my opinion, build a society on abstract principles. It's just dangerous. Because then they can say arbitrary shit like you're an enemy of the people. You're like, what the fuck, man? Why? Because we decided who the people are and what their interests are, and we think that you're an enemy of their interests. And you're like, dude, I just want to have my own little business. Like, what's wrong with that? And that's a big difference between English American like Anglo-Saxon systems with European is that they value individuality over community, and
Mhm.
Europeans are more about community.
The collective, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Russians went too much into the collective. Yeah. Well, the Marxist stuff. Yeah, because it's like arbitrary.
Yeah, of course.
The dictatorship of the working class and the proletariat, and then and ruled by a technocratic elite who can understand Marxist principles. Like it's like it's weird. It's like a Catholic Church, like the Illuminati telling you
Would
like
you
we're
see that,
enlightened, we know where we're going, and
Would you see
shit,
that?
60 million people died. Fuck.
Would you see that government by the elite of a serf populace is different from what happens in the West?
Well, we got to understand, right? So, the Russian Revolution, in my opinion, so you got the British Revolution, the Glorious Revolution, the American Revolution, and they all kind of gave their contributions. And you can argue, but I think the Russian Revolution really was about racial equality. That's the
Between Jews and
no. That was actually the big
Between
thing
Jews
that
and
came out
Slavs.
of it. No, not Jews and Slavs. First of all the nationalities that lived in Russia.
Yes.
You got to understand the system was run by Germans.
Yes.
The emperor was German, and the bureaucracy was Baltic German.
This idea that Peter the Great was replaced by a German.
Well, probably. I mean, that's
He
not
went
it.
to Europe and a different guy came back.
It was like a basic kind of like racial thing. Is that Russians are useless? You wanted something done right, get a German to do it.
Yeah.
And the whole
have a German population.
have a German city, St. Petersburg. It's just ridiculously different from Russia, like the rest of the country. So.
Okay. So what's the difference between?
And the thing about it is
Russia
that
and
because it was based on Marxist principles, which argue radical economic equality, and the Cold War is essential from Russia's side is funding decolonization movements, arguing against Western imperialism, because Western imperialism essentially is a racial hierarchy that the white man has a duty to enlighten and civilize the other man.
Okay.
And the Marxist kind of philosophy says is like, nah, that's imperialism, it's capitalism. For one form or another, you're exploiting, one man is exploiting a different population because of low cost labor and so on. So I think that was the big thing, which the legacy, because like the Americans kind of are like, yeah, we're all about democracy and everything, and they feel a bit awkward that black people don't have the same civil rights, and it's like partly they have like no option but to like, we got to advance our legal system and expand the civil rights to the African American population, because like we look like hypocrites, right?
But you say hypocrites, but it is interesting why Americans call them, themselves a democracy, because you've got all these contradictions. You've got everyone has equal rights, but then not this group and not this group and not maybe the,
Yeah, because America was founded by slave owners, and they wanted freedom and democracy for them. And there was like, okay, so at the time, right, this is like this complicated thing, is that property is so important in American political theory, and you have to defend it, and the government cannot take that away from you. But the issue is that when America was founded, the status of many slaves was like, are they property or are they people? And the founding fathers are basically like, okay, we're not going to get anywhere because this is a very complicated debate. And when they had to resolve it, it had to be by civil war, because some people were just like, nope, I want compensation. And so it's, but it was founded as a legacy from British imperialism ultimately. And not only British imperialism, it's just that, the Europeans had slave labor everywhere, the Dutch, the Spanish, I'm not sure about the Spanish, actually, the French and the English, but when essentially it was an English colony of Englishmen which separated from the rest of the empire. But the British also have, it's just they weren't shipped to Britain. They were shipped to plantations in the Caribbean and wherever the hell their labor was needed, right? So that was So they were kind of like at the point of when they founded the United States, it was probably more democratic than anywhere else because Europe was super
At that
elitist.
time,
Yeah,
yeah.
Europe was super elitist. Like only you had to own land in the UK to vote. You had to be of a certain social stature, and businessmen couldn't. So it was, so America offered much wider options from that point of view. It's just now Europe has probably evolved beyond America in some ways because they consider like healthcare a right. They consider like
because in the US you still have to pay.
Fucking crazy university fees. That's why I'm here.
So you're saying the most democratic, not country but continent, is now Europe, even though the USA prides themselves.
So, yeah, for sure.
It's
I think like Scandinavia.
Bread and butter, we are democracy. Everyone. It's the home of dreams. You know?
But like
dreams
to
come
an
true
extent, right? But I think Scandinavia within Europe probably the most progressive. But to an extent, you got to understand the Americans conquered essentially Western Europe, right? And they're like, okay, you're going to be a democracy. You're not allowed to elect Napoleons or Hitlers anymore. That shit's not going to happen. And so, Europe is like more socially progressive. They have healthcare, but they also forget that like, the Americans came to Europe like the same way the British came to India, and they united the continent, said, you're all going to speak English and we're going to civilize you. And we're also going to, rebuild your economy and everything. And we're going to outsource your security. So you're going to join NATO. You don't need to spend money on tanks. You can spend it on hospitals. The Americans spend a lot, spend a lot of money on the army, but they don't spend, they do spend a lot on healthcare, but it's just not, it's not fucking fair, man. You guys need to pay for your own fucking security. Like, but that's the problem. Like, I think in American politics, so you get to the point why, like, it's a bit ridiculous that why are we protecting the world? These fucking Europeans got so much. It's like you go over to Europe, you're like, what the fuck? High-speed trains everywhere.
I know.
Like, what the fuck? You assholes, you owe us money. Like, pay for your own shit. Like, we're not gonna protect you against Russia. They invade you, do your own stuff. Like, fuck you people. Like, we want our healthcare. But that's kind of like the thing is that there's a hypocrisy, I guess, from a European standpoint. But it's also because America is a much more complex society because it's a triracial society.
Triracial, what do you mean by that?
Because America is basically consisted of European settlers and then later economic migrants from Europe, all parts. The WASPs, right? The Saxons and German people, they're like the crisp creme de la, like the old Americans, right? The New England, like Harvard elite, right? Yeah, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. Lorenzo's look.
And the third?
And you got African American, you got Hispanics. So America took away a third of Mexico at the time. So Texas, California, New Mexico, Arizona, and so
there's a lot of
Latinos, right? And they're different. It's a very multicultural society. And it's actually cosmopolitan. Europe is international. America is like properly cosmopolitan because they all just melt into one particular identity. And of course, since then you got migrants from different parts of the world, but those are the three main ones. And Europe is like, it's not as diverse. Realistically, Englishman lives in England, and sure, there's like some immigrants and so on, but they're not. They're a minority. They're a minority of the population, right? And you only see them like, but in America, it's pretty much that Latin Americans are now going to be the biggest ethnic composition.
If you break down the white guys into Germans and English and French and so on, and white Spanish, and
and Europe has been rich for a really long time. They got their shit together, and America has a lot more room for growth, and it's also a more complicated political system because it's a big ass country. With its 300 million people, the whole of EU is 550 million people. Its economy is slightly larger than the whole of EU, but then again, like that doesn't mean that the quality of life is as good. It just means that the shit they produce is worth more. So like iPhones and all the intellectual stuff comes out of America, but doesn't mean that like the average guy benefits from that. Probably can't even afford it.
Okay, here's a question. Maybe Lorenzo, you can pitch in.
Mhm.
What culture will have the first breakaway civilization? Is it going to be Britain or the US?
I don't even understand this concept of breakaway civilization. It's just
But he spent 3 hours explaining it.
So we're seeing a breakaway civilization within the Western elite, within the Western white elite, partnering with the Chinese Communist Party to create this breakaway civilization on New Zealand, which they will go to let the Chinese take over America and Europe with their one belt, one road policy.
He's read Stark by Ben Elton.
No,
That's
Stark.
the story of a breakaway civilization.
Stark.
Stark.
I don't think that makes sense. A breakaway. Like what? All the rich people are going to colonize some planet in a different solar system
Yeah, that's what SpaceX.
and leave the poor
SpaceX.
people
What
to
about
die.
SpaceX?
Exactly,
Yeah.
that's what SpaceX is
Elon
about.
Musk is starting that, right?
So Elon Musk is in an
attempting.
interesting position in the
He sells
network.
this motherfucker sells electric cars. Like,
Yeah.
let's just get real. He goes out saying like we're gonna build a tunnel from New York to Sydney and we're gonna
It's
colonize
hyper,
space. This motherfucker's just trying to sell Tesla. So
Yeah.
all this shit, he's just trying to boost Tesla's
yeah, of
stock
course.
because that's like a crappy, mediocre car, which is like meant to like it's okay. But that's dude, if you can't even make a freaking really cool electric car, which is that nice, what the fuck is he talking about with like space? That's just a marketing
Yeah,
ploy,
of course it
man.
is,
Like,
of course it is. But what he's also
like let's
doing,
get real. This guy just knows how to sell
but
shit.
it has to come to an end when he can't deliver
People are like,
on
wow,
what
this
he said
guy's
he
gonna
will.
colonize Mars. Let's buy a Tesla share. Like, dude,
of course.
that's what he's doing, man. He's just really good at this shit.
He's just good at the hype cycle. He's just
Exactly.
really good at creating a hype cycle. But what he has is a special
Goes to
position
smoke sweet
within
with fucking Joe Rogan. Come on.
within the breakaway civilization kind of matrix. He has a special position. Whether he's kind of internal control opposition or not, we don't know. But what his position is to seed out these various ideas about the breakaway civilization into the mainstream through Joe Rogan on the show when he's taking up and saying 420 stock price, blah, blah, blah. He's doing a play with the stock market and his company, but he's also seeding out these top level ideas, as does Alex Jones on Joe Rogan and so when he comes on, and from slightly different perspectives, but still within that matrix. So the whole Mars colony thing is, as Dan says, a kind of microcosm or a tell about what a breakaway civilization can do and be, but actually it's not about Mars.
You can only,
For the moment,
like,
it's about New
I was
Zealand.
arguing with people who fucking studied economics, and this is why if you don't study history, you don't really fucking understand economics. So I'm saying the only way you can actually colonize space is if you have charters.
Yes.
Like the West Africa Company,
Yes, like the
East India Company, where you got
Joint
monopoly
stock
charters,
companies,
which then they
yes.
can issue an IPO for
Yeah.
one particular company to get all the concentration of money they need to actually fund an expedition, to fund a proper resource gathering operation, to send it back. So it has to be fucking profitable. And they're like, no, man, but the market needs to be contestable and free market. I'm like, no, jackasses, that's abstract fucking economic theory for consumer maximization.
Yeah.
You don't get that. You don't like. You need a monopoly to get a crazy ass operation like colonizing space
creating
resources.
Infrastructure.
Dude,
and then,
they need
Yeah.
supernormal profit for that shit to work. You can't
Yeah.
fuck the consumer in that situation. It's
Yeah.
that's like economists, man.
Yeah, no.
Fucking just do your maths
It
and
doesn't
shut
make
up
any
about
sense
everything.
because if you look at, as you say, the periods of growth, then you get to the Roman Empire, the British Empire, the American Empire. You don't get to a free market of trading, as you say, crappy consumer goods. You get, here's a flag, go out and plant it. You have our government backing exclusively to create the Darien colony of the joint stock company of the Darien company, which is what bankrupted Scotland. So in the 1660s, when Charles I came
they thought
and
they could build the
returned
Panama Canal.
after
Stupid Scots.
after the English Revolution and Cromwell died in 1659, then there was a constitutional crisis in Britain. What do? Cromwell, in his will, said, my son Richard Cromwell will take over as Lord Protector of England, Mark II. Richard Cromwell was a weakling and fled off, and so re-invited back was Charles II, the son of the beheaded King Charles I, who Cromwell had got rid of 10 years before. Now, there's 10-year interregnum, Lord Protector of England. Cromwell was king in all but name of a nominal republic in Britain, which he then was controlling as a sovereign himself. We've looked at the Leviathan of Hobbes on the show, and we've looked at the ways in which that was structured, where it looks like it's a democracy, but actually in a republic, protecting the majority and protecting the individual. But in fact, it didn't. It protected Cromwell. Now, his dynasty died with him. He didn't get a dynasty. He didn't get his son in power. So we got the son of the other guy back in power, Charles II. Now, at this point, all the Scots were breaking away, doing their own breakaway civilization from Britain to create a Stuart Scotland. So as you see the Germans come in, as Charles II doesn't have any legitimate kids, then you get Charles II's younger sister Mary invited back from Holland with William the Prince of Orange, who then they had the Glorious Revolution in 1689. They create the Bill of Rights. They create a new constitutional monarchy after the Great Plague of 1665 and the Great Fire of London of 1666, and then Charles II's court of decadence. We see okay, we're going to stop this decadence with women on stage. We're going to come to a new kind of Enlightenment social contract, which is where the Glorious Revolution and the Bill of Rights come in. William comes and brings Dutch kind of business-like structure to England, along with Mary, his wife, who's Charles II's younger sister.
Guys need to
then
do some stock market stuff.
So then what happens is in the late
Can you just talk
century,
about how they failed to build the Panama Canal?
Yeah, exactly. I'm getting there.
You don't need to just get there. Start from there.
In the late 17th century, the Scots all came down from Edinburgh. They stopped being kilted, claymore wielding wild men and started being periwigged Enlightenment men. And they created the Athens of the North, which is Edinburgh. Like the new Athens, they saw themselves as not these kilt-wearing crofters and who kill people. They see themselves as these Enlightenment philosophers and thinkers. Now they came down to do the proof of concept. The proof of concept, the test bed, was the Bank of England. The Scots came down and with Isaac Newton created the Bank of England and Samuel Pepys. Now they used this as an experiment. Then they went back up to Scotland to create the Athens of the North, and they created the Bank of Scotland. When they did it right for the first time, they did it for the second time. So Scotland was an independent country, and these were governed by the same king, because the Stuart dynasty was Scottish, but they had separate nations. Dual monarchy. One guy, two crowns.
Yeah.
So Charles I,
Austria-Hungary.
James I, Charles I, Charles II, William and Mary, James II, William and Mary. These were all dual monarchies on the either side of the head. Of one was an English crown and one was a Scottish crown on the same head, but they were two different kings and the same person of two different countries.
Habsburg style. Yeah.
So, like the double-headed eagle. So. Why is that important? Because in the 1680s, the Scots went back up to Scotland after they created the Bank of England with Isaac Newton, and they created the Bank of Scotland. They then said, okay, we've got this East India Company, which has been given the flag to plant in India by the English monarch, and you got Francis Drake and the privateers and Walter Raleigh, who were given rights to go and get Spanish gold from the ships, and they'd have the backing of they were pirates, but they were state pirates with the backing of the British Navy, the English Navy at the time. So you had this structure where a single company, a private set of individuals, would join together under a charter which was stamped by the monarch to say that the country says it's okay before Company's House. That's how you form a company. A company was a company of men, and a company of men is a military division. So what you would be is you would be an army, a private army employed by the state to go and do a task, which is with the backing of the state, but it's done privately for profit. That's how joint stock companies came into existence. Companies are, they're the regiments. They have a uniform and a flag, and they're a private army that goes out and does your bidding to expand your empire. Now, the Scots, in their independent Bank of Scotland scenario in the 1680s, said, okay, well, we've done it once in England with the East India Company. We've funded them with the Bank of England. They've gone off to India and gone off to South America and so on, and then to the then 13 colonies of the owned United States in North America, and these are all very profitable things. And so we're going to do one of our own. So they go, and the Scots say, where's the key geostrategic point on the planet? They're very clever. And they say, where's this key point? It's in Panama, what will become Panama. Right, because it's this isthmus, this
Either
narrowest
Suez
point,
or Panama.
Suez or Panama, are the two choke points in the world, where you get past a
Because
continent.
they connect to, like, you know,
By
you
going
gotta
over a
either
small
swim
land-
around
a small
South
land
America
bridge.
to the
Yeah.
Pacific,
So
or you build a
Gaza,
canal.
through Suez.
Right.
So you don't need to go around Africa, you can go through Suez. You don't need to go around South America and by Antarctica, you can go through Panama. So you can go between oceans without crossing around the whole bloody continent.
Yeah.
Now, from Sylvia Ivanovna, what's really interesting is that these
Sylvia Ivanovna.
the woman who says the monkeys will build in Petersburg and the column cannot be raised by the rope because the fashion model, who is also a mathematician in Russia, calculated the size of a rope you need to pull the Alexander column up, and actually the rope cannot pull itself under
I
its
feel
own weight.
slightly
Remember
Definitely
her?
haven't seen that
Remember
one.
her? No, it's called
Definitely seen that one.
Chimpanzees Build St. Petersburg.
Are you
I'll send you the
serious?
link.
You are very
My
disrespectful
God.
towards Soviet engineering, actually.
That was not Soviet because it was the
just
Alexander
because their
column.
fridges don't work.
My God.
So chimpanzees built St. Petersburg. So this is Sylvia. You know Sylvia. I've showed you some of these videos. That one in particular,
Fine
and you know
craftsmanship.
Sylvia.
Yes.
So
Sure, I didn't watch that.
The rocket ruins of the Starfoots of Malta. Anyway, so what Sylvie said and identified in photos of the building of the Suez Canal, the building of the Panama Canal, is actually these were in the building of the Corinth Canal, all in the late 19th century, so-called. And she looks at the archive photos, and we'll find the clips of this in the photos and the analysis, and put it in the show notes. And when we talk about Antiquitech again, as we were last Friday with Philip Druzhnin, who will also give a shout out to in the show notes, our very, very close friend in Antiquitech from Moscow, who we interviewed last Friday very successfully. We had a great time. We got loads of viewers and got over 100 subscribers now, thanks to his audience coming. And thank you, Philip's audience, for coming in and talking to us and being part of the New Athens debate. So Sylvia Ivanovna says that these canals, Corinth in Greece, which cuts off the Peloponnese, so you can go straight from Sparta to Athens without having to go around the islands of Greece. Then Suez, which takes you from the Mediterranean through to the Indian Ocean without going around Africa, and Panama, which takes you from the Atlantic to the Pacific without going around South America,
the Canal.
all existed before the late 19th century building date. And if you look at the construction photos, what you see is that they are hollowing out an existing megalithic giant stone structure, and it's dusty, and they got to extract the dust and the debris and the mud out of this channel that pre-exists, and then they just repair it a bit, and it already was there. So what we think the Scots
I think that could be with the Suez Canal for sure.
Exactly.
Because
so the Corinth Canal, the Suez Canal, and the Panama Canal.
Egyptians did build their own canal,
Yes.
Valley of the Pharaohs.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure they figured out.
So Suez and Corinth and Panama were ancient structures that pre-existed their so-called building dates. What the Scottish realized in the 1680s and 90s was they can go and reopen the Panama Canal, which already existed. They didn't pick it off a map and say, oh, this is the narrowest point between the Atlantic and the Pacific. They knew there was a structure there that they were uncovering. So they sent ships there, and like a joint stock company, like the East India Company, they sent money, and all the Scottish people put money together and then sent it off to provide the ships. And so they subscribed. So what the real benefit of the joint stock companies was that the monarch would stamp the company as being an army. The army would then get funded by all the citizens, and the citizens would give contributions to the Bank of England, which then allowed the funding to happen as a collective enterprise. And then the profit would be taken back in shares once they conquered India or whatever, over the East India Company, once they conquered, or the Hudson's Bay Company that went to up to Canada. And once they got the profit back, it would be shared not only with the Crown, not only with the Bank of England, but also with the subscribers, the shareholders, who would then get a dividend. And that's how England became rich through its empire. Not only the government, not only the elite, but also the citizenry. So the Scots said, okay, we can do this. We made this in London. We can do the same thing in Scotland. They sent the ships to Darien. They were all the people were diseased. They were killed off by the Spanish. They were killed off by the French. They were attacked. The company failed. They then raised more money in Edinburgh and then tried it again with another round. They tried another colony in Darien, trying to control for all the problems they had the first time. That also failed. Scotland was bankrupted and all the people in Scotland were poor all of a sudden. And so then the dual crown of the monarch in 1707 became a unitary crown. Scotland said, okay, Bank of England, we're bankrupt.
No. The crown didn't become unitary. Parliament became unitary.
Yes. So
Very
you're right.
different things.
So
okay?
they became bankrupt. They sued for bankruptcy to the Bank of England that said, okay, well, we'll take possession of Scotland as collateral for your loan, like the Chinese are doing with their One Belt One Road policy. So the Chinese build you a port.
1707, you had the Act of Union.
The Act of Union between the two kingdoms,
Parliaments
which mean that
merged
Britain
and
emerges out of England and Scotland. So then we get
Hence
Britain,
United
this United Kingdom. That's why it's the United Kingdom.
But she's still Queen of England and Queen of Scotland
separately also. So it's like
They wanted
like
to
the
make her-
triune God. You know, it's
They
three
wanted to
and
make
one
her.
at the same time.
There was debates in the 19th century to make Victoria Britannic Empress, but it would essentially they would have had to codify the Constitution,
Yes,
and as a result,
and have Indian MPs in Westminster.
no, not necessarily,
American MPs and
not
so on,
necessarily,
Canadian
but they would have had to codify the
Why
Constitution.
they didn't have those.
And they're like, no, because of the way it works.
do you want to see what's in your Putin? What's in your Putin?
It could be Crimea. You could snatch it back.
You could have Sebastopol back.
That's funny.
You know it is.
So what the result of that was that Scotland was bankrupted. This is what's happening in the One Belt One Road policy today. So with the One Belt One Road policy, let me go down here. With the One Belt One Road policy, China are doing exactly the same thing as the English did to the Scots in the Act of Union of 1707. What the Chinese say is, we'll build you a port in I don't know, Sri Lanka is a very good example. So Sri Lanka has Chinese-made port infrastructure in their One Belt One Road policy. They're trying to conquer the rimland, as Dan is identifying in our video. So they're trying to connect both the heartland, so from China through to Italy, through the Asian continent and the Eurasian continent through to from Shanghai to Italy on the one hand, and overland through the Silk Route, and then they go round the rim as well, round the rimland. So from Beijing out into the sea, around through Hong Kong, Taiwan, Southeast Asia, and Sri Lanka, India, Arabia, Africa, and then to Europe by the other way. So it's a pincer movement around Asia to Europe. This is the One Belt One Road policy, which the Chinese are using to
conquer the world
through their geostrategic ambition of the 21st century.
We must not let them have the rimland.
Exactly. So what the Chinese are doing with these various countries on the way,
war with Iran.
Yes, it makes sense. Hillary Clinton and George Bush and Obama want war with Iran. That was in their playbook from the George Bush speech in 2001 of the axis of evil. What did he call the axis of evil? He said it was Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Iran, and North Korea. And they've had 5 of those wars: Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria. Blah blah blah. There's another one, and they haven't yet had North Korea or Iran. So on the playbook of the deep state is to have these Iran war and the North Korea war, which you keep seeing previewed in the mainstream American media and is in the mainstream American kind of trilateral commission and Council on Foreign Relations like playbook. So the Chinese build you a port in Sri Lanka, and they say, "Hey, we'll include we'll improve your infrastructure and allow you to trade with the world. How about you borrow money to then get this port, which is going to benefit your economy?" And of course, it doesn't benefit that. It's a very successful port, but it's operated and run by the Chinese for their own benefit, and you Sri Lanka can't afford to then pay the loan obligations or even the interest. So China says, okay, like with the Act of Union in 1707, you've gone bankrupt. You can't pay our loan. So we'll just take the port and we'll lease it back to you on a 99-year lease. Essentially, China is creating Hong Kongs all over the world, where they then gain back the infrastructure into their empire because they've done predatory lending to countries to build the One Belt, One Road infrastructure for trade that those countries then can't afford, and which then we've got a little bit of show and tell going on in the floor. Which then those countries can't afford. The assets are repossessed by China, and then they gain imperial territory, inverting the Hong Kong narrative of the British Empire with Hong Kong taken away from China for 99 years, which they see as the greatest embarrassment in their history, and one which they're now seeking to reverse engineer, as we are reverse engineering their playbook for our breakaway civilization of the New Athens, creating this startup blockchain civilization and this chain, this network of nodes, these smart city states, which we're going to seed out inside existing cities around the world. So you can be free and join with us together in a new constitution on the blockchain, a new citizenship on the blockchain, without an inchoate a social contract which is coercive of you, but instead you have full permission, you give your full consent to the terms and conditions, which is what we were getting on to discuss from earlier about 23andMe. Now, I've got to thank Dana for all her questions and for her probing and interrogative grace. She's still here, and she has been really very good at probing some of the starting points of where we're going with this New Athens breakaway civilization, startup civilization project.
We also want to mention that Budweiser is our sponsor.
Yeah,
it's so funny. You have the American flag behind you and you're drinking Budweiser. It's like, yeah.
We'll get better sponsors. I promise. We'll get better sponsors. We'll get like Nootropics, I think. And we have some music from Oliver, original.
The Asbos.
From the Oliver Nelkin and the Asbos. Hell yeah! Woo! Yeehaw!
That was fun. Yeah.
We could be friends.
Is the secret to staying skinny all your life just bring the guitar?
Oh.
I think that's like, yeah.
Oliver Nelkin and the Asbos, everyone. Original music from Mornington Media. Here we are. So, one thing we'd like to bring out is a call to all of our musicians in the New Athens to come and record at the studio. We'll be broadcasting live. We've already premiered music by Ed Mirza, lyric tenor, and also by Christabel Milbank and Rob Selby, who on our boho show, who gave a live acoustic set. And Oliver often plays for us, and he's a music producer as well as a TV producer, so he can then produce all of our music needs. And we're producing original music to then distribute through our channels. So on that note, we should probably give you some pointers as to where to go to continue the conversation, and we'll be broadcasting again the latest Friday. I'm in Suffolk tomorrow, so we need to work out when the next one is going to be. Latest Friday Night Lights as usual. So I just wanted to say, please feel free to comment in the live chat on the YouTube, and then on Friday drop into our Zoom or call on the WhatsApp, which we'll be leaving in the show notes. If you like what we're doing here at the New Athens, leave a like. If you like the content, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and share widely.
Share. Yes.
I'll leave all the relevant materials in the show notes from today, but you can follow us further on our Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/the New Athens. There's about 1,300 people who comment on there at the moment, and that's a really lively community which we're building up as our first smart city kind of decentralized network.
Exciting stuff.
And so on Friday, we'll be discussing our new blockchain university project as to how we can educate one another and share our skills to create new entrepreneurship from birth through to adulthood and in continuing education. Universities are going online. We're providing new content in terms of the documentaries you can already see. We'll then be creating a new series of documentaries, clipping out some of the really tight conversation between guests on the live streams and then turning that into documentary content. And then we're getting teachers on to do courses of education, which then come out of the live stream, and we can then look at some of the things in more detail and give more skill share and different kinds of educational courses, which we'll then be taking out through the blockchain, through this new knowledge standard cryptocurrency which we're creating here at the New Athens. So that's the Blockchain University. You can participate in the debate on the Facebook, and we're now redeveloping the website, which is smartcitystates.io, smartcitystates.io, which is that there's going to be updates there soon. So from me, Lorenzo Mefsip, founder of the New Athens, thank you. From Dana Karyova, revolutionary theoreticienne.
Happy to be here.
We got such good Socratic dialectic from Dana tonight, really holding our feet to the fire.
I'm glad.
In conversation, which is the best, as Socrates said, the best form of the proving of ideas, and that proving ground for thought, not in contemplation, not necessarily just in writing, although writing is extremely important, but in live conversation, so people can defend their ideas and be questioned and really see eye to eye and come to a different kind of contract. Yes. And also from Dan, who's always been with us here at the show, our legal analyst and historical analyst and geopolitical analyst, whose film we'll be producing very, very soon. We come out on the channel
Tomorrow, actually.
Tomorrow,
yeah.
Really?
Let's do it tomorrow. Fine. I'm in Suffolk, but let's do it. Yeah, let's do it in the evening.
We'll just do it tomorrow.
So. Okay, film tomorrow, hopefully. Yeah, let's set a deadline. Okay, Dan has set himself a deadline, everyone, for the geopolitics film to come out tomorrow. So we'll see when I get back from Suffolk if that's happened. Let's see, make sure it does. Anyway, from me, Lorenzo Mefsip, and all our guests tonight, and Oliver as well, our wonderful producer and multi-talented aficionado and bartender and all the other functions that he provides very well for us in the fullness of time and under the right circumstances and so on. That's all from me. I'll see you next time.
Hey boys, high fives! You did such a good job. I love listening to you, so thank you. I knew nothing, and I still do. I know more.
We need more girls on the show. That was a good revelation.
That's absolutely true.
I'm here for the tits.
Yes.
Hey, I have a little bit of.
You were very
brain.
demure. You've got a very high neckline.
I have a little bit of brain that I'm about to drink away.
You've got sassy brain. Sass is a good. It's like demonstration.